Hi, I'm Denny Somack, and this is the Rock Podcast. I'm a rock historian, producer, and best selling author, and this is the number one podcast for classic rock. We're in our fourth season. On this episode, I'm happy to have Iain Matthews, a major figure in the British folk rock scene and beyond. This guy has recorded over 50 albums, first as a founding member of Fairport Convention, solo, and then with his group Matthews Southern Comfort, where he had a hit with a cover of Joni Mitchell's Woodstock about a year after Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young released their version. In the early 1980s, Iain left making music to work in A&R. An A&R representative is responsible for finding new artists for a record label to sign. He worked at Island Records and then Windham Hill. However, he played a guest spot at a giant festival in Oxfordshire, England. Over 20,000 people attend this thing every year. After his performance, he ran into Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin. Plant told him, "You're too good a performer and writer and should give up A&R work and return to performing." And that's just what Matthews did. I've been a fan of his almost from the beginning. I was excited to talk with him, and I think you will enjoy our candid conversation. Let's start with you got a new album. How much is enough? Now,
That's right.
what do you have, like 50 albums out? How many? 100? I don't know.
I think my solo albums are hovering around 40. And then if you pull all the band stuff in, I think it's over 70.
Are you
I
close?
know. I know.
So when did you record this one?
Let's see, where are we now? We're in September. I did it in the springtime. I think March, April.
Okay, and this is a silly question, but where's the title come from?
Well, I was contemplating retirement. I was thinking of, I was wondering, how much is enough? When do you stop? How do you stop? And I ended up writing a song called "How Much Is Enough," just sort of contemplating all that stuff, and it became the title song of the album.
And you wrote how many of the songs on this?
I wrote 12 of the 13. Some of them are co-writes.
Okay.
I think there are about 3 or 4 co-writes on there.
Well,
And the 13th song is, remember Biff Rose?
Sure, absolutely. A thorn in his mother's side or something.
That's right. That's right. Well, the 13th song is a Biff Rose song that I've had it in my collection for a long, long time, always intending to do it. And finally I thought, okay, this is it, now or never.
Boy, that's a name from the past I haven't heard.
Yeah.
He was great. I loved him.
Yeah. Crazy man.
Yeah. So you were contemplating not recording anymore or not performing it or retiring?
I was contemplating not making any more solo albums. And quite honestly, Denny, I still am. I think, like I said, I've got about 40 of them out there in the marketplace, and I think that's enough for anybody.
No, you can't stop. You
Well,
can't.
I won't
Those are
stop.
great.
I won't stop. I don't know how to stop,
Right.
I'll keep writing. I am still writing. I mean, I went into the studio for this record with twice as many songs as you hear on the record.
Right.
And I'm going to do some work next year with Andy Roberts, some plain song stuff.
Right.
And we might end up doing another plain song album. So I'm not going to stop. I'm going to slow down a bit, and I am going to stop making solo records.
Okay. When do you decide something's a solo record and something's a Matthews Southern Comfort or a plain song or a...
Well, whenever, it depends who I'm working with. If I'm going into the studio by myself, then it's a solo record. If I go in with Andy, then it's automatically a plain song record. And
Right. Okay. Well, let's get a little bit of background. I know your history, but some of the people tuning in here may not.
yeah,
So I first came upon you as one of the original members of Fairport Convention, correct?
correct.
Okay. Now you were the last to join?
If you don't include Sandy, I was the last to join. I was the last to join the original band. Yeah, they were already working as a unit when I joined up.
Okay. I was going to ask this later, but I think I'll ask it now. Sandy Denny. In this country, she's known as the vocalist that appeared on a Zeppelin album.
Okay.
You know, in England, Europe, she's like unbelievably a goddess. I mean,
yeah.
Tell me, what is it? Do we not get it here? Or what is it that makes her so famous outside of North America?
Well, she made a huge name for herself when she was around before Fairport. She worked with the Strawbs before Fairport. And she worked that folk circuit for maybe 4 or 5 years before she joined Fairport. So she already had a following. It wasn't until she joined Fairport that her profile really took off. I think the year after she joined, she was the melody maker, female vocalist of the year. Judy Collins cutting Who Knows Where the Time Goes just kind of rocketed her into some kind of fame in the UK, you know, and there were no other British songwriters getting those kinds of covers then. And she just built a reputation for herself. She was a great live act.
I saw her once with a reformed Fairport in the early mid 70s. That's the only time I've ever seen her.
Okay.
So I just always wonder, anytime I get the chance to talk to somebody who worked with her, I'm just trying to figure out what is it? I mean, you go to in England, they had tributes and
yeah, she was
17 record CD sets, and
I know. She was just a wonderful vocal experience. I mean, she had soul and she had class, and she was a fabulous songwriter, in my opinion. I made a whole record of Sandy Denny songs about 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
Right. Wow. Anyway, so you leave Fairport and then you form Matthews Southern Comfort. Is that right?
Yep.
You do anything between there?
No. It was I talked to a couple of people about what to do. I got some advice, and basically they said you need to put a band together and front it and see what happens from there.
Okay. So you have a hit with Joni Mitchell's Woodstock, which had already been a hit here. I know you didn't play Woodstock, but is there any kind of connection, or what was the reason for covering Woodstock?
I just liked the vibe of the song. I loved the lyrics of the song. I was fascinated with the festival from a distance. And I just had this idea that it could be arranged significantly different to the way she'd done it and to the way CSNY had done it. And yeah, I guess I touched some kind of nerve because a million people agreed with me.
Yeah, I mean, were you surprised when it hit number one in Europe and number 20 something here?
Totally surprised. Yeah, I wasn't ready for that at all. It just gathered momentum. A radio one jock, Tony Blackburn, picked it up and made it his record of the week, and then it just all hell broke loose.
So Matthews Southern Comfort did what, 3 albums? And then
we did 3 albums in a year.
In a year?
In a year, yeah. If you include the first album, the first album, Denny, was intended to be a solo album. And I got cold feet at the 11th hour and had to think of a name for it. And I'd been listening to Ian and Sylvia, and they had a song called Southern Comfort. And I thought, okay, Matthews Southern Comfort. That's what I want to call this record. And then I had to put a band together to promote the album. That's how Southern Comfort was born, really.
And then after 3 albums, did you do another solo record, or did you go right into plain song?
I did If You Saw Through My Eyes and Tigers Will Survive. Yeah. I've spent my entire career flip-flopping between solo and bands, and just going back and forth, trying to figure out I thought I was trying to figure out which I like best, but in retrospect, I think it's just I like change. I like to present myself in different ways, and being in a band and also consistently being solo allows you to do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you're doing some dates in the Northeast right now, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
And then you live in Amsterdam, right?
I live in the Netherlands, but no, I don't live in Amsterdam. I live way south. I live 2.5 hours south of Amsterdam, down near the German border. I live in a small town called Horst.
And how did you get there? I've been to Amsterdam, to Holland a couple of times.
Yeah, I went there to play. I went down there to play, and I met someone, and within a year, I was down there, and within a couple of years, I got married again. And I've been down there ever since. I just stayed down there.
Great place.
Yeah, it's a lovely country. It's really a great country to live in.
So how often do you come over to the States?
Maybe twice a year.
Uh-huh.
Definitely once. Let's say twice every 18 months.
Okay.
I was in the Midwest. I was in the Midwest last year. I'm looking at going to the West Coast in the spring.
Right. Okay. Do you have any favorite places over here?
Favorite places? Well, I think the East Coast is the best place for me to play. I know
Right.
I have the biggest following on the East Coast, and then maybe the Midwest after that. I don't get down to the Southwest very much. I need to nurture that, because I keep getting people online and on Facebook asking me, when are you coming to Florida? When are you going to come down
Yeah.
and play?
When are you coming to Florida?
Yeah. See, the thing is, Denny, I don't have a booking agent, and that makes it a little more arduous to
Right.
make contact with rooms. And maybe this record coming out will change that. Maybe I'll be able to get somebody down there to put a trip together for me. I'd love to come down to Florida.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'd love to see you. You know why you're big in the Northeast? Because I was a DJ in Philly, and because of all the radio play in Philly, New York.
Yeah.
I mean, we loved you, every record.
So you must have known Michael Tierson and Ed Shockey and all those guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We all loved your stuff, played it. I mean, really played it.
What station were you on?
WYSP.
Okay, yeah.
The competitor to WMMR, where Michael and Ed were.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
But no, we would look forward to now. And I mean, I remember when the Plain Song album came out. I listened to it from beginning to end. It reminds me, what's the fascination with Amelia Earhart?
I think the fascination is that nobody knows what the hell happened to her. And there's always, every couple of years, there's new speculation. You know, somebody thinks they found her hat, or somebody thinks they found the wheel from her plane, and I just find it fascinating that nobody really knows, and probably nobody ever really will. I've stopped writing songs about her now. I stopped at 4.
Just amazing. Did you do a lot of research on her, or you just?
I read a book. A journalist in San Francisco, Fred Gerner, wrote a book. I think it was called The Search for Amelia Earhart. And that got the ball rolling for me. I was just, Andy read it, and Andy passed it on to me, and I read it. And then I wrote the song that's on the Plain Song record. And then he found the old, who's it, Red River Dave or somebody wrote the Amelia's Last Flight, and we just became fascinated with the legend of Amelia Earhart.
Okay. Speaking of books, you wrote a book, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Biography, autobiography?
Yeah, autobiography. I had a co-writer, but yeah, I mean, the words all came out of my mouth.
What was that?
Yeah.
If You Saw Through My Eyes, was that the name of it?
It's Through My Eyes. Yeah.
Through My Eyes.
Yeah, Through My Eyes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It people really took to it. I was very happy with the reception it got. I tried not to hold anything back. I tried to serve up the bad with the good, and people seem to appreciate that.
Okay. So how long are you here? You doing some festivals?
3 weeks. It's kind of a low profile thing. I set this up almost a year ago before I knew I was going to have an American label. So there's a bunch of house concerts. I played one festival in Haverford.
That's where I used to live, in Haverford.
Oh, is that right?
Havertown, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm playing Godfrey Daniels out in Bethlehem. I'm doing the Town Crier up in Beacon, New York. The rest of it's pretty low profile stuff.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about this new album. Is there anything particular, or just 13 songs appeared and you went in and cut it?
Well, basically, yeah. I mean, I've tried to have a broad perspective on topics that I put on the album. I've got a song called "Turn and Run" about the Americans and the Brits leaving Afghanistan. I've got it. Let me have a look at it. I've got it sitting here. There's a song called "The Bird and the Fish" that I wrote after reading a book by a man named Powers, Richard Powers. You know his writing?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
He wrote a book. He won a Pulitzer Prize winning book called The Overstory. And I read that and I was hooked. I was a Richard Powers fan. I read this book he wrote called The Time of Our Singing, about an interracial marriage. Mm-hmm. And he likened an interracial marriage to the bird and the fish. And I found that fascinating, and absolutely had to write a song about it. So I try and, I've got a song called The New Dark Ages about us coming out of lockdown and mm-hmm. what's going to happen, what's it all going to be like. And I just try and write as broadly as I can, represent as many different aspects as I can. I don't really care much for writing about myself. I do end up writing about myself a little bit, but mostly I write about other people and other situations. I've got a song on it called Rhythm and Blues, where I kind of take a trip through Black music culture, a 5-minute trip.
Okay. So now you've reformed Plainsong a couple of times, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it keeps rearing its head.
Yeah, go ahead.
And may well again.
Like
again. I said, I'm gonna next year. I've got a UK tour lined up, a 20-date tour with Andy, where we'll do some of the Plainsong stuff and we'll play some of our solo material. But I feel at the back of my mind that it's going to lead to another record. I just feel it.
Yeah. Okay. Now, how did you left the business for a while and went into the other side of the business? How did that happen?
Yeah, I was living in LA. I think it was like 83, 82 or 83. And I'd put out an album. I can't remember the name of it, but it didn't get any attention at all. It just completely fizzled out within weeks. And I thought, okay, well, maybe this is it. Maybe it's time to hang it up and think about doing something else. But what do I do? I went in to talk to my publisher, who was working out of LA, Island Records Publishing, and I went in to talk to him to get ideas for something to do. And he said, "Well, it's funny. I got a call from Blackwell this morning, and he wants to have a West Coast A&R presence. Are you interested?" I said, "Sure, I'm interested." And that was it. I knew nothing about A&R. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I knew I was supposed to look for acts. But I just figured I'd learn on the job. I liked it for a time. I had a good time initially, but I think I'm just too much of an artist to be corporate.
Yeah.
You know, some people can adapt to that side of it, but I always felt that a lot of the decisions that were being made were sort of, they kind of rubbed against my grain. You know, I just didn't feel they were artistic. I didn't feel they were sympathetic to the artist.
Yeah.
And eventually I just couldn't handle it anymore.
Well, you went to Windham Hill for a while, right?
I did go to Windham Hill. Yeah, I left Ireland, and Windham Hill were talking about starting a vocal label at that time, which never really materialized. But they hired me to do A&R for the vocal label, and I think within a couple of months of me joining them, they canned the idea, and they just had me doing A&R for Windham Hill, which it just wasn't something I was familiar with or good at, or I didn't know where to go to look for these people. I took a couple of acts to them ultimately that they signed, but I really struggled. And while I was at Windham Hill, I had this idea for Walking a Changing Line. I didn't know it was Walking a Changing Line at the time, but I had an idea for a record that would be sort of acoustic based and with a kind of a new age overlay, and it would be a vocal album, and it would be the songs from one particular songwriter. I didn't know which songwriter either at the time. Mm-hmm. And I presented it to them, and they just dissed it. They weren't interested. But I liked it enough to pursue it myself. So I quit my job at Windham Hill and followed it through. And then when the album was done, my manager shopped it around, and lo and behold, who picked it up? Windham Hill.
So let me ask you something. When you were at Ireland, did you sign anybody?
I signed a band called Bourgeois Tag. Do you remember those guys?
Sure.
Yeah, they were out of Northern California. I worked with Rain Parade, A&R Rain Parade, the Long Riders, a band called the Prime Movers, who nothing really happened for those guys. But
so what's it like being on the other side and having to tell people yes or no, since you were mostly on the side and getting that reaction from A&R people?
Yeah, I mean, there's a set of rules, you know, when you're on the corporate side of it. I call it the corporate side. It's not really corporate, but you know what I mean. There's a set of rules that you kind of guard jealously, and you get to tell the artist certain things that they have to do, but you never really get to tell them why. And it kind of threw me back to my early days as a solo artist, when I would get the same kind of statements from record companies, from A&R people, and I would always think, why do they want me to do that? That doesn't make any sense at all. It makes record company sense, but it doesn't make artistic sense. And I just wanted to explain it to the artist, why we were doing what we were doing, why I was saying what I was saying, but you're not allowed to. And I just couldn't take it.
Okay. Now, you decided to go back into being an artist again. What made you decide to do that as opposed to looking?
Well, that basically that idea for Walking a Changing Line, I liked the idea enough, that so much that I didn't want to drop it. You know, I felt that it had validity, and somebody needed to do it, and nobody was going to do it but me, really. and that was kind of my way back in. I hadn't written any songs for 2 or 3 years, and it was a good way to come back in with an album of somebody else's material, and that gave me the space to start writing again too.
I understand that Robert Plant's a big fan.
Yeah, Robert and I get on okay.
What's the story there? You met him and he told you should go back to playing. Tell me that.
It was right between leaving Ireland and joining Windham Hill. I was invited to go and play the Crockery Festival, which is a big Fairport festival. It happens in the first weekend in August every year, and they wanted me to go over and do a set with Fairport, but of my material. And Robert, when I came off stage, Robert's always there. He's a big fan. He's a big friend of Dave Peggs, who's one of the guys in Fairport. And I walked off stage, and Robert was standing there, and he basically said, you know, what are you messing around with A&R for? You know, you saw how the crowd reacted just now. You need to start writing again. You need to start performing again. This is where you belong, not in some back room doing A&R. And I just kind of took it to heart.
Right. Have you done any of those the Cropped festivals since that one?
Yeah. I've probably done 7 or 8 of them.
Yeah, it's amazing the cult around Fairport.
20,000 people every year. 20,000 people go.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the immediate future, like you said, you're not sure, but you think you may have another album, you may not. I don't know. But you're having fun playing, right?
I am. I love playing. Yeah. I've got a little trio right now on this tour. Myself and Jim Fogarty plays guitar and mandolin, and I've got a drummer. So it's a really kind of nice little tight unit.
When you play in Europe, do you play solo or with other musicians?
I do both. I primarily do play solo, but sometimes I'll play with my producer, BJ Bartmans. He's a songwriter himself and a guitar player. So I do shows with him too. But I'm leaning more and more right now towards playing solo.
Okay. So tell me some of the music that you listen to yourself of other people's.
I listen to a lot of jazz, a lot of traditional jazz. But I listen to people like Wilco. I love Wilco. His Golden Messenger. You know those guys?
Yeah.
Oh, great band. Really good band. I listen to some classic singer-songwriter stuff. Crowded House, a lot of Crowded House, a lot of Neil Finn. I think Neil Finn is the best songwriter that God ever put on this earth. I think he's fantastic. Elliott Smith. I'm a big Elliott Smith fan. Just good songwriters, you know.
I wish I had a house. I'd have you play a house concert, but I don't have a house.
You live in an apartment?
Well, I just moved from an apartment to it is a house, but it's not big enough to put enough people in here. I want to see you play, believe me. So do you ever get a chance to do Australia or extensively through Europe? Or
you know, I've never been to Australia. I had a #1 single in Australia with Woodstock, and I always intended to go there. But by the time I decided that I really wanted to go, everything had died down, and it was like pulling teeth to try and get somebody to take me over there. I regret not going earlier. I think I could have really established something over in Australia.
Right. And where in Europe do you play? You play the Netherlands, obviously, right?
Play in the Netherlands. I play in Germany. I play in the UK, Ireland, a little bit in France, a little bit in Belgium, a little bit in Spain, Italy.
Okay. Well, you have pretty much, I mean, people worldwide know who you are. Anybody that makes that many albums, right?
Yeah, I'm fortunate. Yeah.
So anything left to do that you haven't done? Other than make another album? Maybe
Oh,
in Australia was
learn to play the piano. I always said I was going to learn to play the piano, and I could never get it together. And then 5 years later, I'd look back and I'd think, man, if I had learned to play the piano 5 years ago, I'd be pretty good right now. And maybe I should start. And then I vacillate for another 5 years. And
right.
I probably will never learn to play the piano, but it's something I always wanted to do. Just never got around to it.
Okay. Well, listen, I wish you a lot of luck with this record, and
Thank you.
I hope
Thank
to
you.
see more in the future. And I hope to see. I only wish I was in Philly now. I could go see you, but I'm in Florida, so if you ever get down here, I will be there. That's it for this edition of The Rock Podcast. If you're listening to the audio only version, I want you to check out our video version on YouTube, and it's all free, no charge. You can view previous episodes with the likes of John Anderson, Steve Hackett, Led Zeppelin, The Doors, Geezer Butler, and more. As always, thanks for being part of making us the #1 podcast for classic rock. We're now part of Rock and Roll for Grownups, so you can find us on the web at rockandroll4, that's the number 4, grownups.com. If you love classic rock, we've got you covered with this podcast and a new radio show, Rock and Roll for Grownups, and more. I'm Denny Somack. Listen for the next episode.